Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. As always, at the bottom of your screen, we have the best way for you to get a forecast outside of our show, that being our 24-hour forecast recording line, our website, weather.gov/Alaska. And then as always, if you have any comments or feedback for us, please feel free to email us at the email address on your screen. Taking a look at the hazardous weather that we're expecting over the next couple of days, it's another busy day for the watches, warnings, and advisories. We have a winter weather advisory in effect for the Chukchi Sea coast. That is going to be in effect through 6 p.m. Friday, so a whole nother 24 hours basically. That's going to be for blowing snow with wind gusts up to about 50 miles per hour. That's going to be creating very low visibility, so travel difficulties in that area. Further south for the rest of the Chukchi Sea coast, as well as the Bering Strait area, we also have a winter weather advisory in effect, but that is not going to take effect until 6 a.m. on Friday. That's going to be in effect for 24 hours, so from 6 a.m. Friday to 6 a.m. on Saturday. That's also going to be for blowing snow, creating low visibility conditions and travel difficulties, but those winds aren't going to be coming up until a little bit later. So right now, winter weather advisory for the northwest coast along the Chukchi Sea, and starting tomorrow morning, winter weather advisory for the rest of the Chukchi Sea coast, as well as the Bering Strait areas. Across the interior, we have a winter weather advisory out also for blowing snow with winds expected to increase. That's going to be in effect actually now through 12 p.m. on Friday. So all the way through noon on Friday, expect some travel difficulties, especially on the highway summits. So we're talking about the Dalton Highway, the Elliott Highway, and the Steese Highway. Summits on those highways are going to be particularly difficult to travel across with blowing snow, creating low visibility concerns. And then we also have a wind advisory in effect for the eastern Alaska range, and that is going to be from Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon. So again, that doesn't go in effect until Friday afternoon, with winds increasing and gusts to 50 to 55 miles per hour, also creating some travel concerns through the passes in the eastern Alaska range. As we move to the southern part of the state, we have a blizzard warning in effect for Thompson Pass, and that is going to remain in effect through 3 a.m. on Friday. So another number of hours of blizzard warning at Thompson Pass with near whiteout conditions and making travel difficult to impossible for that time period at Thompson Pass. We also have a winter weather advisory in effect for Portage Valley and Turnagain Pass, although that one is expiring this evening, Thursday evening at 6 p.m., so coming to an end soon there. In the Panhandle, we have a winter weather advisory continuing for the Klondike Highway. That is in effect through 9 a.m. on Friday for heavy snow, with snow amounts 8 to 10 inches expected there, although some of that has certainly already fallen at this point. We also have a winter storm warning in effect for the Haines Highway, with heavy snow expected there as well, but even more snow, up to 18 inches up near the Canadian border along the Haines Highway. So definitely keep those in mind if you have any plans to travel along the Haines Highway or Klondike Highway in the next day or so. And finally, we have a high wind warning that remains out for the Sitka, Craig, Klawock, and Port Alexander areas. That is in effect through 9 p.m. this evening, so another few hours of that expiring 9 p.m. on Thursday. Expect wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, which could cause some downed trees as well as power line issues, creating the potential for isolated power outages. So lots of weather. Let's take a look at what's causing all of these impacts. If we look at our satellite imagery, we can see a big mass of clouds coming up through the Gulf from the south. That is our main system, creating all of those blizzard, winter weather, and high wind conditions for the southern portion of the state. As we look a little bit further north, we can continue to see some clouds over the Chukchi Sea coast in particular, and that is indicative of those the system that's creating those windy conditions up there. So if we look at our surface chart for today, we can see that trough along the west coast of the state, and that is what is creating that tight pressure gradient along the Chukchi Sea with those low visibility conditions due to the blowing snow with those winds. We also see our low in the Gulf about 969 millibars today. That's going to be moving north, and that's what's bringing those winds and all of that precipitation to the Gulf Coast and Panhandle areas. Looking into tonight, sure enough, we see that low moving up north into the Prince William Sound area. So that's going to be continuing those strong winds and heavy precipitation from there all the way down through the Panhandle. But as we head into Friday, that system dissipates and we finally start to see a break during the day on Friday, which is why we see a lot of those blizzard warnings and winter weather advisories start to come to an end by Friday for the southern part of the state. We do see, however, our next system coming up still well south of the Alaska Peninsula on Friday, but 972 millibars, so a strong low down there. And as we go into Saturday, we see that strengthen a little bit and move up into the Alaska Peninsula area. So that's the system that we're going to be keeping an eye on next. It's also going to be tightening that pressure gradient still along the west coast with that trough. So expect continuing blowing snow, especially for the Chukchi Sea coast. Taking a look at our temperatures for Friday morning, looking at the Panhandle, a little bit cooler than the last couple of mornings with temperatures in the 30s. Mostly we've got 37 there at Juneau, 36 at Yakutat. Cooler as we look at the Kenai Peninsula as well as the Alaska Peninsula with 32 at Seward and 28 at Anchorage. For Friday morning across the northern side of the state, pretty much more of the same. Lows for the North Slope in the negative teens, negative 12 there at Utqiagvik. A little bit warmer as always across the interior. Still negative 3 at Fairbanks though, and looking like 12 degrees at Nome and about 5 degrees at Wales for Friday morning. And then scooting on down to the southwestern portion of the state on Friday morning, we're looking at 20s for much of the Aleutians, but cooler as we get to the southwest interior of the inland part, that is, with about 11 degrees at Bethel, 8 there at Macoriuk for Friday morning. Friday afternoon, our high temperatures not getting a whole lot warmer than the lows for the Panhandle, which can be expected with all that precipitation and clouds around for this time of year. So looking like 40s for the Panhandle, 30s for South Central and the Kenai Peninsula, and also 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, 37 there at Kodiak. For the northern part of the state Friday afternoon, high temperatures for the North Slope not getting above 0, but still a little bit warmer than we've been seeing the last couple of days. So we've got negative 7 there at Dead Horse, negative 7 also at Kaktovik. And then across the interior, a little bit of a warming trend, 13 there at Fairbanks, 26, the warm spot there at the Denali National Park entrance. And finally, for the southwestern portion of the state on Friday afternoon, we'll see temperatures warming for the Aleutians and the peninsula into the 30s. Looks like 32 there at Iliamna, but much cooler for the west coast as we're looking at teens and 20s with 20 degrees there at Emmenak. Low temperatures on Saturday morning. Again, not a whole lot of cooling for the Panhandle, looking like temperatures just dipping down into the mid to upper 30s. So not even a whole lot of spots getting down to freezing, but cooler as we look at the Alaska Peninsula, Kenai Peninsula, and South Central areas. We've got 21 up there at Talkeetna and our cold spot of 5 degrees at Golconda. For the northern part of the state, not a whole lot of change for the North Slope. Still looking at lows in the negative teens, but a little bit warmer than the last couple of nights. Not quite as close to negative 20, more close to negative 10. And then across the interior, a cooling trend there a bit as we're looking at negative single digits across much of the interior, with some of the exception being Seward Peninsula with a positive 6 degrees there at Nome. For the southwest on Saturday morning, low temperatures, single digits continuing down through the southwest mainland, 6 degrees there at Bethel, and then warming as we get down to the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians with lows in the 20s for the Aleutians. And finally, Saturday afternoon, we are looking at basically a repeat of Friday for the Panhandle, with temperatures getting up into the 40s. For South Central and the Alaska Peninsula, though, we'll see a warming trend with temperatures getting up well above freezing in some areas. Looks like 40 degrees at Iliamna and 44 at Homer on Saturday afternoon. Not as much of a warming trend nearly for the northern part of the state. Still negative single digits for the North Slope and positive single digits to teens for much of the interior. Looks like Big Delta getting up to 20 degrees Saturday afternoon. And for the Southwest, still teens for the West Coast with 30s again for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now for a look at your aviation forecast. Starting with Friday morning, we're going to have IFR conditions from that weather system coming up into the Gulf, with those IFR conditions spreading all the way across the Gulf Coast from the Alaska Peninsula up through the Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, over through Yakutat and much of the Alaska Panhandle. Also looking at some IFR conditions along the Yukon Flats and some for the inland portions of the North Slope. For Friday afternoon, we see a little bit of improvement along the northwest side of the Gulf around Kodiak Island and the east side of the Alaska Peninsula, but we'll still see IFR conditions for much of the Kenai Peninsula and spreading up into South Central, also from Prince William Sound all the way down to the Panhandle into the higher terrain of the Panhandle, and some IFR conditions spreading into Bristol Bay for Friday afternoon. Those IFR conditions in the Yukon Flats on Friday morning are going to be spreading down the Yukon River as well as across the Brooks Range and into the North Slope. For Saturday morning, we see a return of those IFR conditions along the entire Gulf Coast from the peninsula all the way up through the north side of the Gulf and into the entirety of the Panhandle. Also, we'll still see IFR conditions from the Yukon Flats up across the Brooks Range and to the North Slope, reaching the Beaufort Sea coast in a couple of areas. And Saturday afternoon, not much improvement for the Gulf Coast. In fact, IFR conditions spreading up the west coast of the state, up through the Yukon Delta and to the Seward Peninsula. A little bit of improvement across the Yukon Flats to MVFR conditions, with even some VFR across portions of the Brooks Range for Saturday afternoon. Speaking of passes, we're taking a look at your pass conditions for Friday. Anaktuvuk Pass looking like MVFR on Friday. Adigan Pass starting the day at VFR but deteriorating to IFR Friday afternoon. Lake Clark Pass expected to be IFR, but a little bit north at Merrill Pass expected to be MVFR at Merrill Pass on Friday. MVFR conditions also at Rainy Pass on Friday and Windy Pass. Isabel Pass also expected to be MVFR on Friday. Mentasta Pass starting the day at MVFR on Friday, but improving to VFR on Friday afternoon. Tanita Pass MVFR through the day on Friday, but we do expect IFR conditions to the west side of the west entrance, so be prepared for that. Be prepared for those IFR conditions just outside of Tanita Pass. Portage Pass expected to be IFR on Friday, and Chilkoot and White Passes both also expected to be IFR on Friday. Our freezing levels for Friday, still mostly surface freezing levels, with the only warm air that we have pushing up into the south side of the Panhandle with about 2,000 feet there. Anything warmer remaining down into the Gulf associated with that system coming north. For icing on Friday, we do have a lot of isolated moderate icing, mostly for the Gulf and the immediate adjacent areas to the Gulf, but also stretching up through the Bering Sea to the Bering Strait. For the Gulf itself, it's looking like, or the Gulf area itself, above about 9,000 feet for the southern Panhandle, isolated moderate icing there. From the northern Panhandle across to the Kenai Peninsula, above about 5,000 feet, and between about 2,000 feet and 9,000 feet for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, and the Aleutians. Jet stream winds on Friday. Our main jet is going to be mostly south of the area associated with that system that's moving north. So we see an arc from the southwest to arcing across to out of the northeast, 100 to 125 knots remaining well south of the state of Alaska. At 9,000 feet, we do see increased winds down in the southern Gulf, again associated with that system, 45 to 55 knots out of the south. Also some peaks 45 to 55 knots generally out of the south and southeast for the Panhandle, as well as the southeastern mainland. And for 3,000 feet, definitely our strongest winds associated with that system out of the south at 75 knots in the southern Gulf. Also still having some peak winds along the Chukchi Sea and Chukchi Sea coast, 60 knots out of the east there for Friday. And finally, for turbulence, we do have the possibility of some isolated severe turbulence below about 6,000 feet for a significant portion of the Panhandle on Friday. Also some considerable moderate for much of the interior, as well as the north and northwest side of the Gulf below 6,000 feet there. And finally, an area of considerable moderate below 3,000 feet for the Aleutians.
Hey there, Sky Nuts. I am Trace. How do you feel about spotting 2 star clusters? Good? I thought so. Grab your binoculars and find a spot away from light facing south around 10 p.m. Put Orion to the left a bit. If you follow the line drawn by his belt, you'll hit a fuzzy smudge that looks like several stars with a faint collective glow. That's the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. You should see a few with the eye, but binoculars help a lot. In actuality, there are hundreds of stars. Once you're done gazing at the Pleiades, head back toward Orion. About halfway there, you'll see a group of stars highlighted by a bright star, Aldebaran. That's the Hyades, a V-shaped star cluster in Taurus. Star clusters are gravitationally bound, so their sisters and cousins have looked like this for generations of humanity. Enjoy the view. Anything can happen when you keep looking up.
The beluga whale, also known as the white whale, lives in large groups and are unusual among whales. They have no dorsal fin, large bulbous heads, and they can actually swim backwards. To feed, they produce sound to find and hunt fish and invertebrates, and they use sound to communicate.
They're also known as the canaries of the sea because they make such a diversity of noises. They make chirps and whistles and gurgles and trumpeting sounds. They just make all kinds of sounds.
In the U.S., beluga whales live in the cold waters of Alaska, and there are 5 separate populations. Of those 5, the Cook Inlet population is the smallest, and has declined by about 75%. Subsistence hunting may have contributed to this initial population drop, but this practice was regulated starting in 1999, with the last hunt in 2005. Still, the beluga population here has yet to recover.
We listed Cook Inlet beluga whales as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act in 2008, and we had hoped that the population would start recovering, but we are still seeing a continued decline. And these beluga whales are only found in Cook Inlet, so if they go extinct, we don't think any other belugas will come back and populate this area.
These whales spend most of their summer near Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, where threats to belugas are on the rise as the city grows. These may include diminishing food, habitat loss or destruction, pollution, toxins, and human-caused noise, which hampers their ability to feed and communicate. Researchers are trying to understand which of these threats may be impacting them most, but Cook Inlet is a tough place to work.
It's really hostile for research. We have the strong tides, which makes it challenging for human safety, and we can't see through the water. It is very muddy, so we're pretty much limited to the part of the animal that breaks the surface of the water. And as a result, we have limited information about the specific population dynamics of Cook Inlet beluga whales.
Up until recently, information has mainly come from annual aerial surveys from aircraft, and boat or shore-based photo identification surveys that use unique markings to tell animals apart. Scientists also use passive acoustics to listen for belugas, but none of these methods can detect much information about their health,
So it's really been a game changer with the whole species in the spotlight designation. We've gotten more resources within our agency.
For instance, we're able to use a drone to collect some aerial imagery of belugas in the wild, and we're hoping to learn some information about the age classes, information about the health status.
And probably the most important bit of information that we'll get out of that is we'll be able to identify the new calves. And we're hoping if we keep doing this every year, we'll be able to get an estimate of calf production every year that will tell us something about how well the population's doing.
We are also expanding upon our biopsy studies, hopefully to give us some information about sex, the individual's reproductive status, some genetic information, some contaminant loads.
Public and private partners are contributing as well. Some are looking at toxin levels in the whale's prey, while others are analyzing beluga teeth to learn about their age and past diet. Others monitor water quality and how belugas react to boats, and more check to see if their behavior changes with increased background noise. All of these findings will go toward developing effective recovery strategies for this population.
As for what you can do, if you're out boating, give belugas space. Don't drive right up next to them. Stay about 100 yards away. If you're flying over them, just remember that you're putting noise into the water as well, and so stay at least 1,500 feet above them. Report a stranded beluga whale as soon as possible, and that's if they're dead stranded or live stranded. The amount of information that we can learn from these animals by responding to a stranding is monumental, and it will help our efforts to recover them.
Together we can help beluga whales thrive in the dynamic waters of Cook Inlet. With continued research and good stewardship, we hope to see this population grow in the years to come.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, this is meteorologist Joel Curtis with your marine weather. Starting out with the sea ice today, there's been some big growth along the west side, including the Gulf of Anadyr, but not a whole lot of growth on the east side. Expect that southern surge to continue through Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday time frame or so, we're going to start seeing a turnaround, and some of the ice edge will start to retreat toward the north. For Friday's marine forecast for the Panhandle. Starting out, we've got minimum gales and small craft advisories on the outside. Whopping seas, though, to 28 feet, ranging and the wind ranging anywhere from 20 all the way up to 40 knots. On the inside waters, 20 to 25 knots, but some gusts to 40 out of some of those fjords that face to the east. Seas up to 10 feet for Clarence Strait. For Saturday's marine forecast, gale and storm force winds on the outside, seas up to 24 feet, 50 knots as you get toward Cape Suckling or so. And then big range of winds on the inside waters, 10 to 40 knots, 11 feet down there at Clarence Strait. For South Central, on the outside waters for Friday, we've got some southerlies and southwesterlies, 20 to 30 knots, and seas up to 20 feet with a big swell. Prince William Sound, 25 knots out of the southeast, seas 5 feet, and not a whole lot of wind in Cook Inlet, 10 to 15 knots, and seas up to 5 feet. For Saturday's forecast, storm force winds all along the outside, 50 knots out of the east, and seas up to 25 feet. Prince William Sound, easterlies 40 and seas 9 feet. And then in Cook Inlet, especially toward the south part, up to 50 knots of wind and seas 21 feet down by Augustine. Then, for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, some variable wind directions, 20 to 15 knots or so on the Pacific side, and seas up to 18 feet. On the Bering side, 10 to 15 knots and seas up to 5 feet. And then on Saturday, we've got 30 to 45 knots on the outside. Shelikof Strait, 45 knots easterly, seas up to 20 feet. And then on the Bering Sea side, northeasterlies 35 knot gales and seas up to 12 feet. For the Aleutian Chain, a lot of northerlies mixed in with some variable winds. On the east side, 30 knot northerlies and seas up to 14 feet. And then as you get out in the western Aleutians, 15 knots and seas up to 8 feet. Then on Saturday, winds start to ramp up. You got 35 to 40 knots in most of the Aleutian chain. Seas up to 17 feet, especially on the Bering Sea side. And then further out in the west, 20 to 25 knots, seas 11 feet. For the west coast, we've got northerlies, 15 to 30 knots, 10-foot seas down by the Pribilofs, and then 15 to 30 knots, again, northerlies, seas up to 11 feet. For the Arctic coast, northeasterlies, 20 to 25 knots, and then as you get down toward the Bering Strait, Cape Lisburne, gale force 35, dropping off to 25 through the Bering Strait. And then Saturday's marine forecast, pretty similar, 25 knots, and then 30 knots off of Point Hope, and 25 knots through the Bering Strait. Quick recap for tonight. Old system, 972 millibars, moving onshore and weakening rapidly. Complex frontal system moving onto the Gulf Coast. For Friday, we've got another system showing up well south of Kodiak Island. A lot of onshore flow for precipitation, snow showers all over the Bering Sea. And then on Saturday, we've got a very complex frontal system associated with 972 millibars over the Alaska Peninsula. Lots of onshore flow. As you get further inland, the rain will change to snow. And then along the Arctic coast, we've got some blowing snow and some light snow. And then over the Bering Sea, we've got lots and lots of snow showers. Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and be safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.